Well, hi everyone. I hope you're fine. Today we are going to discuss the speaking exam. I'm talking about, of course, the B2 first certificate exam. The speaking takes around 15 minutes and it is in pairs, so you will be with a partner doing it. Though some parts are to do individually and some others are to do in like interactively. There are like four parts. The first one is the easiest and it's very simple. The purpose of part one is to just break the ice. So, naturally you will be nervous. So, the examiner will be asking you personal questions. Probably the topics will be related to like your family and friends, or study and work, or travel and holidays, sports and leisure times. Those are the usual topics. So it is advisable for you to have some practice at home on how to answer questions related to those topics. Generally speaking, you are supposed to be nice to the examiner and to your partner, which means that you have to smile and especially make eye contact. Making eye contact with the people you're talking to might show that you are confident, and that would be a kind of extra point in your total score. Now, the most important parts of the speaking paper are parts 2 and parts 3. Parts 2 and 3. In part 2, you are going to be given two photographs. This is an individual section of the exam. That means that you have to interact with just the examiner, not with your partner. And you will have 1 minute. Now, you have to do two things. You have to compare the photographs, and then you have to answer a printed question. As I have just said, the question is printed, which is a kind of advantage because you will be able to look at the questions throughout the entire minute. As it is just 1 minute, you need to be very careful how to administer the time. That is to say, I would like you to devote around 30 seconds for the comparison of the photographs, and then the other 30 seconds for you to answer the printed question. Now, if you take too long comparing the photographs and then you run out of time and you are not able to answer the question, then you will not be successful. So you have to be really very careful. Now, as this is a comparative exercise in a way, you are expected to use comparative adjectives and comparative adverbs. A usual way to begin this section of the exam, as you have two photographs, you may say like, for example, in both pictures, I can see this and this. You are, in this case, stating a similarity. Then you can talk about some differences. So first you begin by saying something that is similar in both pictures, and then you should immediately go to a difference. And so in that case, it is convenient to use some connectors, such as whereas, or while, or however, or on the other hand, because you are introducing a contrast. Example, you can say, in picture number 1, I can see blim, 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 blim. Whereas in picture number 2, I can see blim, blim, blim. And you say something opposite to what you stated in the first picture. Now, another important thing to do in this section of the exam is to use speculative language. By speculative language, I mean language that shows that you are not 100% sure about what you are saying. So if in the photograph you have a boy holding a football in his hand, you may say something like, he seems to be happy with his football, or he might be ready to play a football match with his friends, or he appears to be carrying the ball because there's a football match about to begin, or he looks like he has just been given that football because of the happy expression on his face. I don't know if you noticed by my examples of speculative language where he looks like, he appears to be, he seems to be, he could be, he might be. Or another example could be, I suppose, or I imagine, or I assume, or I guess. Okay? So you are making speculations. You are not 100% sure. That's another very important skill to put into practice in this section of the exam. Now, then, as I said before, please do answer the printed question. Yes, you have to give your opinion and answer the question clearly, stating, giving answers, giving reasons for your answers. Everything you say has to be justified. Now, as regards part 3 of the exam, part 3 is the collaborative task. In this part, the most important issue, the most important skill that the examiner will be paying attention to will be how well you communicate with your partner. So communication is not just words, communication is also body language and eye contact. So by body language, I mean in this part of the exam, since you will be interacting with your partner, you may very well like kind of do this with your body and look at your partner. Yes, because that will foster communication with him or her. Of course, the basic tips for you to communicate successfully with your partner would be to listen to what your partner is saying. Try to make comments about what he or she has just said. Starting up a conversation by asking him or her something. Also, try to avoid being the only one in charge of the communication. Like, do not monopolize the entire thing because this is shared, which means that you have to take turns to talk and you need to be short. If not, you will be taking all the time. Part 3 of the exam is divided into 2 sections. The first part takes 2 minutes and you are given a central question with 5 related prompts. You and your partner have to kind of go over the 5 prompts in those 2 minutes. Now, if you are running short of time, I rather you gave priority to the details of the description rather than covering the 5 prompts, which means that if you are not able to discuss the 5 prompts and you only have time for discussing just 3 of them, don't worry, but discuss them in detail, giving justifications for whatever you say. Now, that's the first part of part 3. Once the 2 minutes are over, the examiner will ask you a question, like, for example, if the central question was ways in which people get entertained, and then you had 5 different options like reading books, playing computer games, chatting in Instagram, etc., etc. Then the last question could be, what's your favorite way to get entertained? And so you have 1 minute to talk about your favorite way. That could be one of the ones presented in those 5 prompts, or could be one that is just the one that you particularly enjoy the best. Again, it is essential to respect your turns, to listen to what your partner says, and to react to those comments so that you make the conversation fluent and natural. All right, now, as I said before, parts 2 and part 3 are the most important parts. Then you have part 4, which will take something around 3 minutes, in which the examiner will ask you another question. Could be the same question for both candidates, or could be one question for candidate A and another question for candidate B. Generally, those questions are connected to the topic presented in part 3. And those are like general questions, okay? And if it is a general question, then you are expected to give a general answer. I would like now, before I forget, I like to show you some ways in which you can, especially for part 3, when you are interacting with your partner, some ways in which you can express agreement or disagreement. Remember that it's not compulsory to agree. You might disagree and it's okay. You don't have to think the same your partner is saying or agree with whatever he or she is saying. So I have this chart, like different ways to express agreement, such as I agree with you, or I agree with that, or I see your point, like I understand what you were saying, I get your point, or you are absolutely right. And this can also be replaced by just one adverb, like definitely, or totally, or sure. And then the last one, I couldn't agree more. There are more expressions. These are just a few that I have just selected, but there are many more. Then you have some expressions to express disagreement. Like, for example, I'm not sure I agree with whatever you are saying, or I'm not sure I agree with that, or I'm not sure I agree with what you have just said, or I get your point, but, or I get your point. However, I believe that, and you say the opposite thing, then that's one way to look at it. On the other hand, and so you present the opposite meaning or the opposite aspect, and then that's interesting. However, now, if you do not agree with your partner, it is nice to express your disagreement and then trigger a question so that communication is not blocked. The idea is not to start up a discussion like an aggressive discussion. That's not the moment to do that. So, politely, respectfully, and friendly, you may express your disagreement and then foster another question, maybe to jump onto another prompt or to jump onto another aspect of the issue you are discussing. Now, in general, just to then, well, part four, I told you that it was also working together with your partner. You might have one question each or the same question both, and usually those are general questions, which means that you need to answer generally too. Now, I'm gonna give you like some important items, or from the point of view of the examiner, what will the examiner be paying attention to while you are talking? So there are three things, and I wrote them down here. Look at that. Items to be taken into account by the examiner, yes, or items that the examiner takes into account. So how you are going to be evaluated and how you're going to get your score. So the first one is grammar and vocabulary. By grammar and vocabulary, this means that as you are sitting for an upper intermediate exam, you're expected to use complex sentences from the point of view of grammar, elaborated sentences. Try to use conditional sentences, structures, try to use passive voice, try to use unreal present or unreal past with should or sorry, not should, with wish. Try to use modal verbs like should and can or could or might, especially modal verbs in the past, just to give you an example. The same from the point of view of vocabulary. The choice of words should be wide. So that means that work on synonyms and avoid repetition. Do not say 1,000 times the word important, for instance, or the word interesting, or the word expensive. So try to have at least 2-3 synonyms in mind so that you make your speech more fluent. Then the next point is discourse management. By discourse management, this has to do with the way you connect your ideas to be coherent in your message. Your ideas must be coherent. You should be making sense when you talk, basically. And in order to connect your ideas in a way that they make sense, the most important thing to have in mind is the use of linking words connectors. I mentioned a few before, but we have been working on that, and you have a long list of connectors to express different things, such as addition or contrast or result or consequence. Yes, there are many of them. So the more you use, the better and the more sophisticated your speech will become. Finally, the last point is pronunciation. Okay, this is essential because whenever you talk, number one, you should be understood and you should be clear, and your sounds should be correct and up to the level you are sitting for. So I will be posting another video with some exercises for you to improve from a basic language to a more improved and sophisticated language. So see you later. Sorry for the length, I couldn't get it shorter. So bye.